Edmund Blair Bowles has, as the author of 16 or so books, has covered a wide range of topics, including a biography of Einstein, the history of the Ice Age, and a number of other books that you can learn about on his website. I was particularly interested, as a member of Science Writers in New York, to learn about the origin of this book. The book is called Babel's Dawn, The Origins of Human Speech. I hope I got that title right, but I did notice that it is origins, not origin. So there's multiple origins that Blair, excuse me, the wasabi piece, that Blair may be telling us about tonight. In addition to this book being on a really interesting topic, it is also a book that evolved from a blog. And that was one of the other reasons that I was eager to have Blair tell us about the origin of this book, because there are a number of writers in this room who also might be interested in having their blogs evolved into books. And I think with that, I would like to turn, and I'm going to say that Blair is going to speak for about 30 or 35 minutes, and then we will have time for questions. So he's asked that we hold the questions until he is through. In addition to having the question and answer period, we also have book signing and purchase in the back, and I would like to introduce Jay, whose last name I didn't ask, but Jay, who has come to us from the very interesting company Mobile Libris. So that company, if you have a book that you want to have sold at an event such as this, their company serves small publishing firms that don't supply the people themselves. But I'd also like to point out that Jay has an undergraduate degree in linguistics, so we've encouraged him and a master's degree in publishing. So we've encouraged him to also be a participant and feel free to ask questions at the event. Okay, Blair, welcome.
Actually, you won't have to have a degree to ask a question.
That's right.
But if you've got one, you can ask a more challenging question and I'll tremble. So thanks, Beth, for the introduction. And thanks to all of you for coming on the night when the Yankees are about to, you don't know, but they're worried. And I also want to thank Swiney. I've been a member of Swiney and Swiney's precursors since the 1980s. And it's nice to be with Swiney once again for this event. What I'm talking about, let's see if I can, tonight is going from a blog to a book. And there's a picture of the book. I'll hold it up since I have it right in front of me, and it's probably the last time I'll hold it up this evening. To win readers, both books and blogs need the same thing, and that's a hook. Science writers, the hook is a mystery, something that people wonder about. This is the opening sentence of my book. It begins with, what you want your readers to bring wonder with them, and then you satisfy it, or at least somewhat satisfy that urge. In the book, I tell a story about how in the autumn of 1953, which was quite some time ago, I was 11 years old and chanced to wonder about the start of language. I imagined a meeting where cavemen got together to agree on the words for various things. Young as I was, it didn't take me long to realize that without language already existing, no such meeting was possible. Ha, thought I, and never forgot that circular puzzle. Language depends on learning, but learning depends on language. When I was 11, I used to think about strange things, and That's one of them, but it stayed with me my whole life. Bertrand Russell, a few years before I was 11, had raised the same issue. We can hardly suppose a parliament of hitherto speechless men meeting to call a cow and a wolf. So people have realized this circular business for a very long time and have tried to think about, well, how could this possibly have happened? Where could people have agreed to use words? And so that's the first mystery that faces both the blog and the book. How could words have begun? I continue to wonder about that off and on, really, for decades. When I was in my late 20s, I got a new idea. Perhaps we don't learn language from our parents. Perhaps there's an instinct for language and a creative input as well. Well, that gave me a new question, which was change the question. Instead of how did language begin, it was, well, is there a language instinct? Is there a biological role in this? Then I could, with that, I actually had a way of thinking about the problem. So that, that raised another question. If it's biological, why do only humans speak? After all, most things in biology are repeated. There's lots of flying, animals, different kinds of flying, different kinds of predators, all sorts of things. So only humans speak? Well, why is that? Well, if you think about it, is it true that only humans speak? There's lots of animal sounds in this world. I don't know if there's a single animal going down to bacteria that don't communicate. In fact, in this morning's New York Times Science section, there's a story about slime mold, which I didn't even realize it was a living thing. And it turns out they communicate like crazy, doing all sorts of stuff. And they're basically amoebas. When I was in the high school biology class, amoeba was the simplest thing you could study. It turns out they have a complicated communicative life. So, third question is, well, yeah, language does seem to be different from hoots and hollers, but what does make it different? And when you've got three mysteries, you can deal with, you can start a blog. If you've only got one, that's not going to keep your blog going. You can write an article if you find the answer. And that's, about 5 years ago, I thought, you know, I've been wondering my whole life about language and origins. I'm going to do a blog and see what I can find out about this. So a blog is specialized, it's news. If you're doing a blog in which you're talking about what you did that day, it's the news of your day. If you're writing a book, that's a different thing. You want to tell a story. So that somehow, if you want to go from a blog to a book, you have to somehow transfer news into a story. So the way I would think about it, the way I use my blog, I was getting news, I was getting research. But at some point I had to come up with something different. My book is not just a collection of paragraphs from my blog, it's a different thing, it's a story. So when I started the blog, and this is my first post, I had a little section that began right off announcing my news interests. I want to become the main source of news and information about the evolution of speech. And I wrote that sentence, I tremble, because I don't know, I certainly didn't know, if there was such a thing as news about the evolution of speech. It didn't sound to me, I hadn't heard much news about the evolution of speech in a while. But I became a beat reporter. With my beat was the evolution of speech. Like all beat reporters, I developed sources, and I wanted to use every source I could find, which would be about language acquisition in children, comparative biology, language history, experiments in language, medical research, computer simulations. There's something basically every week from one of those sources on language and its origins. So that, to my complete amazement, I had a steady thing. A couple of weeks ago, I had the 5th anniversary of my blog, and there's still news, still new news.